Good morning. My name is Marta Pastori, and I'm 17 years old. I was born in Milan, and I consider myself Italian. However, having lived in 3 different continents, I got a glimpse of how people live differently around the world. When I was in 4th grade, I moved to Tunisia in North Africa, and when I was in 9th grade, I moved to Jakarta in Indonesia. Now, you can imagine the impact of going from Milan, a city of 1.3 million people, to Jakarta, one of the most populated cities in the world, with nearly 10 million residents. Now, such high concentrations of people would never be possible without striking innovations related to agriculture and hygiene, which allow for such populations to prosper. Yet, this raises a question about the unsettling reality of overpopulation. Is there a limit to how many people this planet can host based on the resources it provides? I see the world around me constantly changing and developing, and I know that we will not let ourselves be taken aback by this challenge. I believe in a better future, and I know that the brilliance of the human mind, which has allowed for this prosperity, is able to upkeep the wealth that it has led to. However, this requires tremendous effort in the fields of time, money, and especially talent. However, if we truly believe in our potential, and if we truly believe in the beauty of diversity that contributes to the jumble of cultures and the music of humanity that reverberates within us, we will be able to give everything we can in order to support what we know will lead us towards a world that is more verdant, our eyes will be more vigilant, and towards a life which will be more vibrant. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session dedicated to investments. Believing in a better tomorrow, investing in the future of food and agri-food technology. I'm Barbara Trigari, the moderator of the panel. I'm a journalist from the Italian magazine Markup. It's a technical journal focused on retail, marketing, and the agri-food tech. So, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. I would like to call on stage my guests, my panelists, please come up. I will introduce you briefly. Here we have Dana Schuller-Malek, Senior Venture Partner of New Crop Capital, an early-stage fund that backs entrepreneurs developing plant-based and cultured meat alternatives to foods derived from conventional animal agriculture. New Crop's investments include Memphis Meats, Beyond Meats, Geltor, Weekend Meat, Meaty, Super Meat, and Mijoko Kitchen. Dan is passionate about food startups and sustainability. Then Matthew Vermersch, founder and managing partner of Visvires New Protein, focused on innovative solutions to the acute inefficiencies of the food industry. The fund deployed capital into 2 startups, Insect and Neuritas. We'll talk about it later. Then we have Peter Kruger, CEO and founder of startup Bootcamp Food Tech, an entrepreneur and advisor with plus 20-year experience in the IT and digital industries. His experience ranges from operating as executive manager, board member, and CEO for companies such as Rai, Cataweb, Tiscali, Postecom, Terra News. Then we have Piergiorgio Borgogelli, CEO and Managing Director of the Italian Trade Agency, and previously working in Fininvest, Ernst Young, Fila Holding, Telecom Italia, and also Expo 2015 as Director of Supply Chain and Technology and Vice General Manager. Finally, Nadav Berger, founder and managing partner of Big Bridge Partners, founder of Food Lab Capital, a dedicated R&D and application collective focused on new product development for the food industry. So welcome, everybody. We have many different people operating in different industries, so it's quite complex to find a key to this discussion. I think it would be very interesting. The first question I like to ask you all, so I like you to answer for your own experience. Why you think it's important to invest in startup for innovation? Why you think it's a good way to invest? It's a good investment. Why? So let's start from.
Why it's a good investment? Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Seed and Chips for the invitation. We are a mission-based fund. We believe that animal agriculture is a broken system, and we think that there is a better way. We think it's bad for humans from a health perspective, for the environment, for the animals, and from a sustainability point of view. And in our terms, we are seeing that it is the entrepreneurs, it is the people who have new ideas who are going to change this system. Yeah. We've made a lot of investments across the board, and we're excited with the changes that are happening.
Yeah, so something wrong, so the problem that moves you to invest in the food chain. Mathieu, what do you?
So we are a venture fund based in Singapore. We scout the food chain process and the entire industry, and we try to focus on technological and scientific problems, and we try to untackle those problems. And to do that, obviously, we scout the world for innovative and interesting startups, but that address those specific startups, those specific problems. So we are very, very problem-focused, try to undo those problems, whether it relates to fish meal, whether it relates to diabetes, whether it's related to all sorts of different issues, but we are problem-focused, and that's how we manage the idea that we have.
Health it's a great trend also in food innovation, as I can see. Okay, Peter?
Why is it good to invest in ag-tech or food tech startups? Well, I don't know if it's good for the planet, but I think it's a great opportunity for investors. No, I don't want to underplay the benefits that innovation can bring into the food system. There are a lot of problems. This is, I think, about the 17 trillion industry, right, globally. And it's threatened by a number of structural changes that are related both to demand and to supply. We're not really aware of how we're going to face these issues in the next few decades. But then it's, I think, because we're all investors, it's important that these kind of investments pay off, right? If not, probably we should follow other paths to solve this stuff. And as an environment to invest, I think it's becoming extremely interesting. I don't know if Bob Leclerc is here these days. He would remind us that about 8% of all venture capital invested globally is going into these ventures. So certainly the investors are paying attention. I think generally speaking, what we saw in the last few years is that there are a number of a breed of new technologies and also the prices of some technologies that are unlocking opportunities on the food industries. And that's what we're seeing now.
There's also a big perspective because the investment are actually lower than the weight on the GDP of this industry, or the food industry. So there is a great space for you, or not?
Oh, no, well, we try to find our space, right? I mean, I think they're certainly, this is still a little bit at the beginning of a cycle, I think. Yeah. So there is a lot of space for players. We see a lot of players operating, coming up.
Yeah, coming up.
I think we're still not stepping on our toes too much for the moment. We'll see later on what happens. But yes, of course, there's huge space. We see some really crazy stuff out there, which is the things that I like personally
You mean big innovations? Crazy, you mean big innovations?
Yeah, well, people that are coming up with strange things, right? Strange things, and sometimes great teams behind them, and with the prospects of entering markets that are established, and with some interesting upsides there, right?
Yeah. So Pier Giorgio, he's the new guy in this panel because he does a different thing. He's not probably an investor. So tell us, what would you do for the Italian startups?
First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm pretty different from the other investors all around the panel, probably. Our perspective is quite different in the sense that we represent a trade promotion organization, and our purpose is to promote, let's say, the overall made in Italy food and wine industry all over the world. The way we do, of course, is throughout different, let's say, leverages and promotional initiatives like the traditional wine, big trade fairs, big agreement with retailers, big retailers. We're just working these very few days in contemporary Cibus trade show in Parma right now. But we are pretty interested in even promoting the made in Italy overall food and wine industry by leveraging the innovation capability. We perfectly understand that our let's say core values needs to have more effective food processing value chain. We perceive, even in the way we promote, even big retailers all over the world are asking better quality not only of food, better usage of resources from raw materials to energy, whatever, or we call the sustainable manufacturing processes. That's a perfect way to combine the promotion work we are doing. To some extent, we are interested in innovation, and we work in a different way in putting together those, let's say, part of the Made in Italy innovation capabilities with the startups, probably they are all interested in, much more functional to the way we promote our medium-sized companies. That's not only related to the quality of foodstuff they put on the shelf, but probably we need more capability in food processing. We'll be giving you later on some interesting example how to leverage startups in this.
Sure. So the Made in Italy is not enough to sell products now and in the future to sell products abroad. You need something more. You need certifications, you need new food, you need innovation. And you leverage that through startups. That's the idea. Right.
Perfectly right. When we go abroad, of course, you have to consider different kind of markets in which, if we talk to big US retailers, probably the consumer pattern are quite different in the way, let me say, the features they require connected to the Made in Italy food. But apart of some bad examples of within European Union, like some of you probably know about what happens with the traffic lights in using in a very unfair way the ingredient contents about the food stuff in order to move the consumer choice in a different way. If we go to emerging markets, for instance, right now, within the demand of new Made in Italy food, probably, they require strongly to have healthy kind of contents and ingredients communication about that. That's probably are not able to realize even in the daily usage about what is the lifestyle in getting that kind of food over the, let's say, Chinese and Asian tables as well. We have to provide those information with those retailers.
Very good. So Nadav, what about you?
So first of all, thank you for being here. Truly delighted, and special thanks to Sharon Seaton, the true engine and fearless power behind this incredible event. So I'm blessed, I'm very lucky because I'm the last one in the panel, so I can pick up on the brains on the others. But let me, and in order to be genuine and just support my colleagues, let me just bring you some samples to each one of the things that those guys are doing. So you can understand why food tech there is a saying, don't ask yourself if there is a niche in the market, ask yourself if there is a market in the niche. So food tech is a market, it's not a niche. It's a huge market. As Peter said, it's 17 trillion US dollars. It's 25% of the global GDP, and it wasn't disrupted until now or until recently. So if you compare what is invested in tech in other domains, if you take all the other techs, the cyber and automotives and everything, and you compare it to the potential of the market, and you compare this one to the food, we are still in the very, very, very beginning of this huge wave. I have a partner who will join us to our initiative. Guy started Sequoia, and I asked him, why do you come to food tech? The founder of Sequoia. And he said, well, it feels like the 80s. We were there, we were the 2 first funds for tech, and we could see the wave. And now the wave is food tech. So let me just build on what the intelligent panelist just said. So from Dan's perspective, the chain is completely ruined. I mean, and I totally agree, by the way. But not like Dan, I don't think that the problem is only with animal source broken supply chain. I think that many of the chains are broken.
Yeah, it's a quite complex chain. I mean, food.
Totally. So we were producing food for 3 generations. So I know the food industry a little bit, and I can admit, forgive my colleagues, it's broken. It has to change. So we cannot continue raise, produce, unfortunately slaughter so many animals for our proteins. And this is then the Good Food Institute, and what they do with the fund is crucial. If we go to Mathieu, so they are experts in new proteins. We have to replace this because people need proteins. So they are experts in protein. They can bring the protein that we need from different sources. Well, Peter he was in Tel Aviv for the fast track boot camp, and he's doing Milan this week, no? So tomorrow. So it's a big, big week for food tech.
Yeah.
How could we even think of such a week 2-3 years ago? Starting with food tech startup bootcamp in Tel Aviv, food tech IL, AgriVest, Argitech, Seed and Chips, food tracks, only in 1 week. Dozens of thousands of people exposed to the new emerging industry. But it's not a one person, one initiative effort. And let me use everyone that was on the stage, and especially the nice young lady that was here before us. We are here because of her.
Yeah.
And we're here because of her, not because we think of how to make money and so forth, because if we, as an industry, will not do the right thing, she will take out her phone, which is the most effective weapon on earth now, and she could say, well, I bought this steak from whatever company, Tyson, okay, great company, Tyson, and it has this, they do that, and immediately Tyson has to change. So the true force behind food tech, creating it not a niche as a market, is the audience, is the consumer. Yeah. And people like this young lady, forgive me for not her name, this is the force making us change influence. Just a small hint about what is happening. Look at 2 crazy initiatives that happens now on the globe. First is look at the corporate funds.
Yeah.
Corporates are losing market share. They're losing market share to the sexy, local, healthy, small brands. So now look at the statistics and see about corporate funds. In 2016-17, about 30 to 40 new funds have started.
Lots of companies.
And they want to seek innovation because they know that they have to change. Now, imagine that each fund has a minimum of $100 million US dollars for startups. Duplicated by 30, 40, 50, you have $5 billion available dollars to invest in food tech. And the other great initiative, which I'm blessed to be part of, is the EIT Food Consortium. So 50 players in Europe and global players, but with presence in Europe, gathered to promote innovation within food. So companies like PepsiCo, Nestlé, Givaudan, DSM, best universities from Leuven to ETH and so forth, putting a project of 1.6 billion euro for 7 years just to promote food tech innovation. And the last layer, starting from the potential consumer, with all us serving it, is the government, is the public money. And organizations, and people that will come and bring also the concerns about government and health issues
a more
and so forth.
Based vision. That's very interesting. But you think cooperation may limit the potential of the startups to grow because corporation, of course, follow their own interest. That couldn't be, maybe it's good, maybe not. What do you think?
So I'm a little bit hesitant here because we are supported by 50 corporates, but we are independent. So we can listen to what
From your
is...
experience, I mean, they are really so, I mean, strong on
Yes,
their...
totally agree. My partner, Eric Sieber, he's been working for Inventages for 16 years. Inventages is the Nestle fund. It's a 750 million euro fund.
Yeah.
And he's, to some extent, a bit frustrated because what's the problem with corporate funds? Corporate funds initially start and ask, okay, let's just ease the entrance of new technologies into our corporates. But then when management changes and strategy changes, that might be relevant. And then they ask themselves another big question: do we invest in ventures in order to make money or to make good for our company? So corporate funds is a little bit tricky tool.
I'm going to weigh in on this.
Yeah, please.
We're co-investors in Beyond Meat with Tyson Foods.
Yeah.
And I think in that case, leadership has seen that plant-based meats are a complementary product.
Yeah.
And so they are investing in it. They are understanding that this is a category that if they do not participate in, they're going to be left behind. So I think it's on a case-by-case basis. But I think they are more understanding now that innovation is going to disrupt them, and as it did many other industries before them, and either they are part of that disruption or they are going to lose market share.
One great example, and I totally agree with Dan, is look at Tyson Ventures, our good friends. Tyson Ventures took a senior manager, Mary Kay, from Tyson. So it was just another executive that they wanted to have to get her a new position. And then they flipped. And this is so enlightening. They brought a new guy to run the Tyson Ventures. They brought a guy that used to run for 25 years the Motorola Ventures. So look how food tech is interesting. People that used to run Motorola Ventures for 25 years is coming to Tyson Ventures. But by that, they said Tyson Ventures is professional, for-profit, from people that are not necessarily Tyson. So totally agree. And it's a great example for talents pouring into food tech.
Just out of the last 22 years out of the US, out of the 31 best VC investor, only one is a corporate.
Oh.
So the track record is not good.
So it's not all corporation.
Over a full cycle, corporate venture is not a good business.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there are different also attitudes, right? I mean, this is still, as we said, in the infancy. So we see companies like Tyson really moving very fast. Maybe there are a number of others that we could mention. There are others that are struggling. And this makes it all very, very interesting. I also think it really depends on, what kind of product we're talking about. Meat, hot.
Okay.
Other areas, there are other industries where let's say the incumbents feel much more protected. Sometimes they're highly protected because probably food is one of the more, let's say, regulated businesses, especially in places like, Europe. And this is extremely interesting. What we see, and I think this is where Italy can play a little role in this game, is...
He's Italian.
I'm Italian, yeah. Is the fact that what we see is the struggle in these very large organizations to, play the game. It's because of their, enormous size and bureaucracy and so on. And what we see is that instead, Italy, which is a crazy place, right? Italy is a crazy place because it's the second or the third largest sort of agri-food country in Europe. And yet, if you go and see, the largest company, I think, doesn't make more than €5 billion revenue, which is nothing. It's peanuts compared to the big players in the world. And why is that? Because the Italian landscape is made of these mid-sized companies, privately owned, and let me restate, privately owned, that are very fast in making decisions. And that's what is extremely compelling of running an accelerator program here. When I present a startup to a large corporation, it can be a very painful process to go from a pilot test to a commercial pilot and so on. Here, if you can connect to the right people, typically the owners of companies that make something like between 300, 500 million euro revenue are typically very international, very innovative. If you can bring the value, these guys jump on it immediately. And you see the product on the shelf in very, very fast time. So it's an interesting environment.
Yeah, not just for the big
Peter,
fish.
It's only a matter of time, because wait 2-3 years, and because of the young lady here, they will have to change. They will have to embrace innovation. So it's a matter of time.
Yeah, and also the Italian government may
I
agree.
think that, once again, different perspectives. They make money
Yeah.
through by investment. I do another job. Anyway, back to the point that I was just saying, it's pretty interesting. The open innovation systems, from my own perspective, does support our made in Italy positioning in food and wine industry. Again, not only working for big corporation, but even back to the other point, to small, medium-sized company. Please go through the Cibus trade show. You will watch different reality, which probably, back to the point you were saying just a few minutes ago, the single entrepreneur within this small, medium-sized company is able to leverage innovation. And it gets innovation through by different channels, even by, building up startups, let's say, acquiring startups, integrating startups, different ways. And you can get it. To some extent, our role, back to my initial consideration, is we have to sustain those kind of companies to get the right level of innovation. And it is interesting, the trade-off between the big corporations. We are just attending in the big shows and the big events for the startups we're organizing. We attend big corporations as well. They're pretty interested in understanding. Some are more reactive, some others not.
Sure.
But especially within the food and industry small value chain, I want to mention just one example within our promotional effort. Back to India. India's got a governmental program in which, required by Food Processing Minister, we just attended from our own standpoint a World Food India last November, and we just launched a mission in which they want to involve let's say, the made in Italy food processing system and moving over there. We still have big champion like Ferrero is doing, but they're asking to integrate the overall small, medium-sized company that some specific food processing techniques within the agri-food mega parks. Yeah. And they do still have problems in not only in getting the Italian food, they want to get Italian technology. There are different ways we can move technology over there, leveraging this kind of this chunk of innovation and move over there. That is not only related to the quality of food stuff again, but even the way you manufacture that. Yeah. The usage of water.
That's a know-how.
Much more than know-how, the cold chain, the cold storage kind of capabilities. And they want the big made in Italy brands, not only the big ones, but even a small, medium-sized company. Yeah. And making made in Italy in the emerging market means much more. Moving technology over there, not only products.
Yeah, okay. So now we came to another big question. If sustainability and how sustainability is connected with profit, because you invest money, so you, of course, look for profit, but sustainability is strictly connected to the food chain. It can't be eluded, so you told me you try to solve problems, so I think it's very connected.
Well, sustainability, there's a lot of different definitions.
Yeah, exactly.
For us, sustainability is one of the reasons we do what we're doing. Animals are inefficient machines in terms of it takes a lot more calories in terms of energy, water, land, feed, time to feed a cow to eventually get a burger than it is to develop something plant-based. Yeah. So that's part of our whole mission is that as the world population keeps growing, everybody still needs to eat protein. But it's protein, it's not animal protein.
Yeah, not necessary.
And so in terms of why we do part of what we do is sustainability, because we see that this is the only way to feed a population that will reach $9 billion.
So for you, it's a big criteria to choose new startups to invest in sustainability of the process. Yes. It's one of your criteria.
Part of the criteria, I mean, the criteria, we invest in people.
Yeah.
First and foremost, are these people that will have the drive the passion, the understanding to bring something to market. And they don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
They need to know what they know and need to find help with what they don't know.
Yeah, because the difficult passage is to go from the idea to the market.
Yes, and that's where
Usually.
we bring in. We help them with whatever part they need. Sorry. If they have a roadmap towards a good price point or to scalability, which is one of the key concerns with going from a startup manufacturing 100 pieces of an item per day to 10,000, do they have the understanding of how to grow awareness, branding, social media, that sort of thing? Do they have the right taste? For us, taste is what rules everything.
That's another key question. We'll
So,
talk about it
yes.
later. Okay, Mathieu.
It's not so much that sustainability is a good business, it's that unsustainability is not a business at all. So investing in sustainable business is the only way out.
Yeah.
Just to give you two examples, all of the growth in fish consumption obviously is going to come through aquaculture. Today there is a big issue about fish meal, which is what you give to the carnivore fish to eat. In volume, just to get a sense, in volume today we fish more for fish than we fish for human. So that is completely unsustainable.
Crazy.
So finding a solution to fish meal replacement is obviously a sustainable, but also a very good business proposition.
Yeah.
Another example in the layer chicken business today, when you raise layer chicken, so the chicken that will give you eggs, you cannot identify the male. So at 3 or 4 days after hatching of the eggs, you basically kill the male chicks. So around the world today, we kill about 3.2 billion male chicks every year, and we don't do anything with those. To find a solution to the sexing of the eggs in the layer chicken business, save 3.2 billion lives of chicken, but also save half of the space in any hatchery, because you breed and you hatch and you breed half of the eggs, and sometimes you vaccinate half of the eggs that you will discard, that you will not keep.
Yeah.
So it's unsustainable and it's a very bad business. If you can find a solution, you have both at the same time.
Yeah, and it's the same also for agriculture, because this is a very basic business in which it's really difficult to test a solution, to know that it works. It takes time, so it's critical. What do you think?
The issue of agriculture, real agriculture, I mean, it's a lot of things that has been put on top of one another. And if you were to redo it today, you will do it completely differently.
Yeah.
China today raise animals. China should not be raising animals. China doesn't have the resources to grow the food for its livestock.
Yeah.
And before China, no country on earth have raised animal without having the means to raise the crops to feed the animals. So,
Yeah.
we've built up systems that
Yeah.
have zero sense.
Yeah, it's broken. I was saying before. Peter.
Oh, well, I think what the gentleman just said kind of suggests that if you can find some kind of environmental sustainability, this typically brings efficiency, brings value, and therefore you most likely will find also an economic sustainability, right? We deal with very early stage startups, so the economic sustainability is something very far away to see, and
What are you looking for? What's your criteria to identify the right one?
well, certainly this is one. I mean, if they can come with a vision of bringing big loads of innovation, of efficiency to some industries, then that becomes extremely interesting.
Okay.
But of course, we are, I guess we can afford to really look at the crazy things, right? Like monitoring pigs and trying to interpret their behavior to understand if you can save some tons of pesticides that you're, supplying to the, in the animal feed, or things like that, right? So it's, probably we like to see the visions of efficiency, right? In the
in
selection
your stage.
process of the teams that come to take part to our program. But in the end, we're more looking for the crazy stuff, I would say.
Okay. Sustainability is important also in
Yeah,
your choice.
let me say that, of course, sustainability is a very broad kind of concept in which we have to work with.
Exactly. I'd like to know your
let me-
idea.
Let me give you a couple of examples. I used to be working on Expo, we're just in Milan, as you mentioned in the presentation, and feeding the world was part of the mission. What does it mean? From our own perspective right now, consumer patterns in usage of sustainability concepts is quite different all over the world, let me say.
Yeah.
US ones perceive in a different way. What back to my concept in emerging markets is quite more relevant. The way they want to leverage the sustainable ingredients, it was just mentioning proteins, use of pesticide, whatever, manufacturing process. Probably over the emerging markets, they do have a different perception.
Yeah.
From a promotional standpoint, we get leverage about sustainability in a different way if we talk to US ones.
Yeah.
Back to European people, a part of the segments of millennials, whoever are involved, like the lady presented, they introduced the conversation, probably do have a different perception about the sustainability ingredients within the foodstuff and the way we produce. The Indian examples, they are perceiving that since the waste of materials is a key fundamental national problem we have to work with. The other example is on the fashion industry. The two major countries that we know very well, the Italy and France, didn't have a sustainability summit over there. In the last 3 years, there's just leveraging the concept in order to go to market process in which we say, we are becoming sustainable. Again, how you build it up within the brands the way you are really sustainable. Raw materials, workforce process, you know, the way you use it, reuse of, within the circular economy, reuse of materials, that's pretty interesting, and many others. Right now, they are thinking about how to leverage the concept. I think the sustainability is pretty interesting, but you have to clearly say to the customers the way you perceive that. Within the fashion industry, it started up in the last 2 years. In the food, based on the geography of the markets, are pretty different. I think pretty interesting, but you need to decline a better way.
Yeah, communicate it clearly to the consumer.
So again, I'm privileged, I'm blessed to build on what was said. But for me, we started by saying that the food chain is broken. In other words, the food chain production is not sustainable. With all those great examples, we cannot live like this anymore. It is not sustainable. So from animal protein source and what Dan is doing with Bruce Friedrich at the Good Food Institute, it's mind-blowing. They're changing the world. If I take the example of Mathieu, the eggs, by the way, there are 3 companies in Israel that are dealing with it. I'm going to introduce if you haven't heard of them yet. So each one of those is a big issue with sustainables. But I want to add 2 more things, which I find potentially to be 2 of the most interesting topics for food tech in the future. One is waste. Yeah. So Mathieu's perspective is that at the end of the day, it's what? Waste. We produce so much, but we waste half or 1/3, even before cultivating it, with the resources of course, to grow it and so forth, and then we kill it. So we make too much and we throw away too much, way too much. So this is not sustainable. So waste is some kind of measure of how unsustainable we are in the food chain. And the other example, which is becoming a huge topic in the food industry, is the packages. If we talk about sustainability, animals are great. It's very important. Totally, I'm supportive of Dan's work. But think about the billions of packages being consumed every day, not a week, every day, by billions of customers, and then being thrown away. And this pollutes our oceans, this kills our animals, and we don't know what to do with them. So one of the big topics for me in food tech would be a smart packaging.
Yeah, another question that's emerging from your scenario is that maybe we miss like a Silicon Valley of the food innovation. that could have a vision, a more broader vision of the situation, and also guide innovation in a certain sense. So a place where people can talk to each other, with innovators, startuppers, investors. Startup could be a good idea. I mean, it's something you miss too, like a Silicon Valley, but around food. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're starting to see that. I mean, that's the reason I come to Seed and Chips, to meet other people, to share ideas, to see what's happening in other parts of the world. And we're seeing more and more of those all over, from China, the US, starting to happen in Latin America. One part of food that's very important, not on the packaging side, which I agree is one of the biggest challenges, but we focus on food is very local.
Yeah.
So you might be able to develop a product in one place and you might be able to take it all over the world, but you are going to require logistics, last mile, understanding of the consumer, the distribution networks. So in a sense, when we are exploring opportunities for our portfolio companies in other countries, we do not pretend to go into that country. We find a local partner, we share our knowledge, we share our product, we share our branding, and we tell them, what else do you need? Many times the flavoring is changed, the packaging is changed, there are local laws. So in a sense, it's not as easy to go broad and have one standard.
That's also a big issue, because it's the balancing between tradition and innovation, because each one of us has his own food, preferences.
That's the beauty of food. Food is very
it's
personal.
It's a good thing. Could be, it could be taught abroad. I mean, the Italian, the American, the Polish, the French. So how do you balance those different point of view in your choices?
We stay away from consumer-facing innovation. We focus on giving the tools to the industry to basically, process better and process more efficiently, or process in a way that makes more sense to the world. So, but again, if we've built something that is mostly illogical and that doesn't really look the way it should be, we import. 80% of the fish consumed in the US is basically imported from Asia. And most of it is one particular fish that is only made in China because they let it do it in China in a non-environmental friendly way that will not be tolerated anywhere else in the world. So the US consumer is the most responsible of that state of fact. And we ship that fish, with a very cheap fish, by plane all the way from China to the US.
That's incredible.
And again, China has zero competitive advantage whatsoever to make that fish, apart from the fact that they are very relaxed law in terms of environmental control.
So in this case, consumers are not on the right path.
Yeah.
They must be instructed to change the behavior. That's interesting.
I think, sorry, just to, on that point, I think the consumer is very separated from where their food comes from.
Yeah.
And they don't understand everything that's involved and all the challenges behind the scenes. Sorry.
Please.
This is very interesting. Well, first, coming back to your question, is there a Silicon Valley what? I always kind of get threatened when I hear the word of replicating Silicon Valley. This is a buzzword that has been going around Europe quite a lot in the last decades and didn't produce much. Silicon Valley is a bit of a planet in itself. You just have to drive 10 miles out of San Jose and you're in America. And then Silicon Valley is a completely different thing, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a certain sense, and it works very well like that. But going back to food, the interesting thing is that this is a place where, in a certain sense, the Silicon Valley is playing a little bit catch-up. Probably because food is local.
Yeah.
Probably because the big players in the food industry are not there, or probably not there. And so you've seen a lot going on in places like Germany, China, of course, France, Israel, of course, and India itself, and even something here in Italy. And I think that what's interesting here is that we're seeing a very distributed network of innovation. I think I pride myself that during our scouting, we run these 11 events across the globe, literally from Shanghai to the Silicon Valley. And why is it important for us? Because for us, it's really vital to connect to all the innovation players everywhere. And I don't think you can play the game self-sufficiently in the Silicon Valley today. I was recently, I don't want to speak badly about guys that are really, really good, but I was recently at the Y Combinator demo day, and we had some things coming out related to food, and I was a little bit, let's say, not seriously impressed. Why that? Because there is a lot of stuff going on in many other different places, even in the US, in places like Denver, New York, and so on. And interesting also in what you were saying is I think that, yes, it's true the consumer is strongly separated with respect to what's going on behind. But he's increasingly becoming conscious, aware. And what I see is that, in fact, what you typically saw as two separate worlds, the downstream and the upstream of the food industries, they're actually in this space, in the innovation space, they tend to converge. When we launched our program a couple of years ago, we said, look, for us, food tech means also ag tech, okay? We're looking also at that stuff. And people were saying, no, how can you confuse the two things, right? And in fact, I think that now probably one of the key successes or factors that are playing well into what we're doing is exactly that. And what we see around is that increasingly the food players, the organizations that are operating in this field are looking at the things together, literally from farm to
Convergence is a
the
global
table.
trend, I think.
Briefly, two comments. Some different opinions, of course, as the quality of the panel. First of all, I'm with the colleague, the Italian colleague, since he's Italian, probably I'm be joining the opinion easily. The innovation is much more spread in the food tech business right now. I wouldn't think about to recreate Silicon Valley. It doesn't make any more sense, in my opinion. It's still, I wouldn't say on the shelf, but something like that. That's probably needs, as he was just mentioning, getting through different big and small, medium-sized company to see where is generated. You do have a lot of chances and examples. Please visit the companies. You get much more innovation over there within the food tech applications, the food manufacturing process, than in the imaginations. Within the food valley, let's just get an example in the food valley in Parma, let's say in the overall part of Cibus, you will see a lot of chunk of innovation, even that in small, medium-sized companies. A lot of those. And it's something not known very well. It's not something we can communicate on a specific event. What about MBT techniques development? You do have a number of companies that are doing that. Within the wine, grapefruit, you do have a number of those. Please, go to see. You get innovation. The other comments, very briefly, back to you. Food is local. Partially. Consumers are changing the habits, are different all over the world, are changing the habits. The way we promote food does imply that you have to get them completely aware. That is particularly true in the quality of food they get. And on that way, back to the point, ingredients, packaging, labels, manufacturing process awareness, get them involved in a different way that's probably much more aware than in the past in getting the food lifestyle. Please watch out the emerging markets like Asia and especially China. They're pretty interested, but do understand they come from. I'm partially agree with the local council.
Okay.
So let me be a little bit provocative here, because I, to some extent, Don don't agree with what some of the things that were mentioned here. And of course, I might be wrong. But first, let me do my shtick with Israel. So I was in a meeting in Europe with the Chief Innovation Officer, SVP of Procter & Gamble, American company, sitting down with the Chief Innovation Scouter for Europe for PepsiCo. And I was privileged to just sit there and listen. I couldn't contribute anything. It was too intelligent for me. And I listened to them, and suddenly they started to say, well, Israel is the Silicon Valley for Europe. Well, to some extent it is, but I think that we have to be modest. And I totally agree with Peter that Silicon Valley is a different thing, but Israel is becoming truly the food valley of Europe. But do we have big food industry? Not at all. We don't have the big companies, exporting companies. We don't have the Barilla and the Ferrero and Nestlé and PepsiCo. We don't have them. But still we have the innovators. We have the entrepreneurs. And I think that the role of everyone here is not necessarily about matching the corporates with the entrepreneurs. It's about creating a structure, an infrastructure for young, bright people. Or we have
Good ideas.
one startup that is led by a 72-year-old founder and CEO. So not only young, but talented people that wants to change, that we have to give them the tools. And when you talk about talent, and we talk about entrepreneurship skills, this has nothing to do with geography, because those guys could come from whatever it is. Yeah. So I would change the term from Silicon Valley to Food Valley. And who was the first food valley in the world? Wageningen, Holland. They say Food Valley. They started to use this term 10 years ago. Yeah. And then you see Wageningen, which is a great university. By the way, we just signed an agreement with them, collaboration. And now Unilever R&D Center, Global Center, is being built within the campus of Wageningen. So you have an area which decide to be important. Of course, you have initial infrastructure, you have university, you have researchers, and so forth, and you create the infrastructure that will allow great innovative things to come out of it. What is the conclusion? The conclusion is that it can help. This could happen everywhere. Yeah. You can create Food Valley in Parma. You can do it in everywhere in Italy. You can do it everywhere in the world. It's only about getting the infrastructure and the support to people to start to move into food tech and bring the great new things. And by that, sorry for not being a national Italian here, I think that one of the hurdles in Italy is by the fact that it's too conservative. It's the fact that it's too traditional. And you guys, your task from my perspective is to embrace the young people, to embrace innovation. I buy the Cecco or La Molisana or big brands of pasta because I appreciate the quality, the heritage, the history.
But it's not enough.
But I would love to have the next generation of pasta even being produced by those or by a more interesting brand. Yeah. So embrace innovation, needless to whatever it is.
Okay. Just one final couple of things. Just define your vision of the future, like 2-3 words, 2-3 concepts, very, very fast. We have just 2 minutes.
2-3 concepts. Okay. Yeah. In terms of proteins that we consume,
okay.
I see the future 30-40 years out. Top of the pyramid, animal proteins will be very expensive and not very available, and they will no longer be subsidized. Middle of the pyramid will be cultured meats. Those are still ways out, but they will be the future. And bottom of the pyramid will be plant-based meats.
Okay.
I think in the next 10 years, we will have to completely change mass market food in relation to health consideration. And I think the regulator, especially in emerging market, is going to come hard on those issues. And I think it's from emerging market that the regulation pressure is going to come on the big food manufacturer to change their process and their recipes to process a mass market food that's less harmful to your health, just because they cannot afford the health crisis that is burgeoning in Asia.
Okay.
I'm very hard to add to what they said, but I strongly agree. I think that very hard to predict, but what we really saw is consumers are changing. And I see in the next few years this change, this pattern of change, behavioral change is going to change even stronger, sort of with more speed. And this is going to drive a lot the transformation of the food industries. I mean, I see, especially in the meat. In the meat, I see really something, there's a wave coming. And when that wave passes, and I think consumers learn that there is a different model of consumption, even of a single element in their food habit, then you learn, and become more sort of expecting of additional change. And I see this coming very, very strongly. Let's say next decade, next decade.
I personally see a great change in consumer patterns again. They were mentioning much more informed consumers in the use of food, much more than getting on the shelf what I would call the labels, characteristics, having clear picture about they come from a food processing standpoint. On the other side, I wouldn't, back to the consideration of Nadav, I wouldn't make confusion about brands and quality of innovation inside. You could be maintaining the brands, and I'm with him, to get innovation available. And I hope, again, to that point, that the overall worldwide business, a part of Made in Italy, I'm sorry, pretty more interested. To get consumer more informed means even getting some components about the innovation you are able to put on the brands. I wouldn't change the brands. I would change the quality of process the consumer could perceive. That's the reality I see. Last consideration on this, please take the look of what's happening over the digital channels right now. That's probably even the consumption of food is completely different from what happens on the physical distribution channel. That to some extent means people and consumers on a worldwide basis are getting food in a different way. They make a different kind of choice since they are just underway of being formed on a different pattern.
Last word
How
is
can
to
I
you.
be genuine here? I mean, so smart people. So I'm not going to talk about clean meat and all the things that, because this is being taken care of by great people, truly, and it's happening. We can foresee it. But as I grow older, and I'm going to hit my 50s within a couple of months, very disturbing.
Big party.
So I become a little bit more concerned about the food and the sustainability and the health issues and what it's doing to us. And with this domain, I can see a couple of great things. Is the tech coming into food, meaning improving the supply chain. By improving the supply chain through blockchain solutions and stuff like this, we can waste less, more efficient supply chain. And this applies also to packages, which for me it's a big issue. I'm very concerned about it. So for me, looking at the eyes of my daughters, and maybe one day telling them that I did maybe good thing to Earth is the interjection between sustainability, waste, and food, because food is so big.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.